On today's Locked On Badgers community show, questions, answers, comments, we're going to talk about it all. Bring your stuff into the show. All that and more on today's Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? I am Ryan Herrings, your host of Locked On Badgers. Thank you so much for jumping on with us as we continue to build the community, making this your first listen every day. Again, we are here for your team every single day. And we talk about it a lot, building the community. I'm so grateful for everyone who listens, who leaves comments, and that's what this show is all about, getting more voices into this. We had Justin Jolka joining the show, and it's just going to be your comments, your YouTube comments, your concerns, frustrations, and some positive stuff too. We're going to talk about them all. If I don't get to it, I'm sorry. Like, we have too many to get to in one show. And there's a lot of comments, shockingly, that are of similar nature, right? So if you add a Paul Chryst, for example, comment, it may be covered by
couldn't possibly be any of those.
It may be covered by one of a multitude of Paul Chryst comments. One other quick note, the service we use here, StreamYard, I'm limited to 200 characters. So some of your comments were longer. I had to kind of chop them up a little bit because I want to display them so people can see them. It makes it easier to read it. It makes it easier for Justin to see it. So if you see that your comment and it's a little shorter than what you thought, that's why. But I'm definitely not trying to misinterpret anything anybody said. So if you think I did that, reach out to me. Let me know.
He's censoring you.
Yeah, all the positive stuff's out the window. No, I'm here for all of it. We're going to chop it up, and I really appreciate everybody commenting. So with that being said, let's just get into it. These are all comments based on the last couple shows, everything post Washington State, which makes sense, and we're just going to talk about it. Again, really appreciate everybody commenting and tuning in here. First one, this is from Badgerman C. Loved Mike's insight. Mike was on the show the other day talking about how the offense under Chryst has really struggled. He says, I noticed a 3-year slide on offense, realized it was Bielema behind Paul all the time. You have two types of Wisconsin fans, pre-Barry and post-Barry. And Badgerman C went on to say, basically the pre-Barry fans are totally fine being 6 and 7. That's kind of their just having a decent team. The post-Barry fans want more. So I'm curious where you're at on this, Justin. Is there kind of a pre-Barry, post-Barry expectations difference?
I don't know if I'd say it's that like black and white in terms of what we're looking at. I think there are just fans that like having a decent team and don't really care about, pushing it to the limit. It's like we've seen with people who are more academics on this that are like, yeah, it's great to have a good football team, but whatever. We don't need to be putting that kind of money into them. And I quite frankly disagree. And I think you and I are on the same page there. When you invest in the football team, it's like a face of the university. If it blows up, then you start getting more, applications coming into the school and everything, and it allows you to be more prestigious and to be even choosier with what you bring in. So I think that there are the crowd overall is probably split 20% that are like, hey, we have a legitimate shot with the resources that we have to push for a national title. And then the rest of the people that are like, I want to see, maintain what we have. Maybe every 3-4 years we can push for a New Year's Six game or whatever. And I don't know about yourself, but I want more than that. I want to I want another Big Ten title. Like, we've done it before, and it feels like what's holding us back now is that we're afraid to just go all in on it. Like, we're more stuck on the way we want to do things rather than what actually achieving our goals are.
I think there's probably a healthy middle ground with this particular one too, right? Like, I think we should all be appreciative of the fact that this team typically always wins 7, 8, 9 games. A lot of schools don't do that.
Yeah.
But that they're also, again, there's a lot of quotes out there, but one of them is you get better or you get worse. You never stay the same. Right. And I think we could be satisfied or happy with what we have, but also focus on how do we keep getting a little bit better? Because it does feel like we backslid a little bit here.
Oh, we definitely are.
Badgerman C, good question. I really appreciate it. I don't know if that answered it or not, but really do appreciate it. Let's come to the next one here. This one's from Andy Nevins. And if I mispronounce any names, guys, I'm so sorry. PC needs to let Engram take over completely. We looked good when we attacked the field and put their corners in bad spots. Yeah, Justin, thoughts?
Oh, I agree completely. If you're going to hire somebody as your offensive coordinator, I think you need to let him do his thing and, stay out of his way. And yes, you can have input when there's critical moments in the game, but for the most part, let him work. And, this is a coach that has coached at the NFL level and should have pretty good insight into how teams are trying to do things. I think that the big thing here is it shouldn't matter how we score points or how we win games. Like, let's do whatever the defense is willing to give us. So
can I throw out?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I want to just throw out the weird qualifier here because I agree with everything you're saying. We don't actually know.
We don't.
What Paul Chryst is doing with the offense or not doing. And we also don't really know how good or not good Bobby Engram is as a play caller because he's never done it. What if, and I don't think this is completely true because I'm of the belief that Paul Chryst still has some influence on the offense here. That's just my opinion. I have no inside source on that. But what if Bobby Engram is also a conservative guy and wants to lean on the run?
That could be. And I think that that's a problem if that's the case. Because the biggest thing we took away from that last game is there's a complete lack of urgency. Like, you're behind in the game. If you want to start burning clock again, get ahead. Like, just get the lead at least. But even then, like, if you're up 4 points, do you really want to waste a 9-minute drive that potentially doesn't get in the end zone? And then now you gave it back with 5 minutes left in the game, and the other team has a chance to just burn clock all the way down to win the game.
Which is what happened.
It's like, be aggressive. You get up double digits, then you can start to start grinding a little bit. But if you're not up enough to where it's a one possession game or whatever, don't worry about the clock. Worry about getting your offense in a rhythm and trying to make something good happen.
Don't shorten the game when you don't have the lead against a team that's worse than you, right?
Yes.
That's something Mike Millman told me.
Don't shorten the game when you're losing ever.
Yeah.
Because you're taking a risk there that you're going to run out of time. Which
is exactly what happened, by the way. Andy, man, thank you for the question. Thank you for the comment. Some of these are comments, some of these are questions. Brian, I mean, this kind of is reflective of a broad sense of frustration, right? Chryst has to go if Wisconsin can't beat Ohio State in 2 weeks. Brian, they're not going to beat Ohio State in 2 weeks, man. Chryst isn't going to go anywhere.
Let's put it this way. I'll be happy if they could stay within 2 touchdowns. In that game.
That's by the way, the game time for that was announced. It's going to be a night game in Columbus.
Which we're not nuts.
Listen, crazy things happen. Right. I remember Jim Harbaugh at Stanford upsetting USC when they were a 40-point underdog. Crazy things happen, but realistically, Wisconsin is absolutely not beating Ohio State in 2 weeks.
We are not. Okay. So the games that Ohio State has coughed up in the Big Ten, the other team has been very aggressive with them, come out and attacked them and put them on their heels. So most likely, I mean, the recipe is Ohio State takes a team lightly, like Purdue or Iowa, and they come out and they hit some huge chunk plays to get a lead, and they keep their foot on the gas. Iowa did it. Purdue did it. Both of them scored, I think, 40-plus points in those games. I think
Rondell Moore scored 40 points by himself.
But the bigger point there is they put pressure on Ohio State, and Ohio State started to take risks that they didn't want to, and they made mistakes, and that allowed the team to kind of ice it. Wisconsin does not play that way. And because they don't play that way, unless they absolutely dominate in the trenches and can consistently carry out drives, they're not going to win.
Well, they're not going to they're just not going to dominate in the trenches against Ohio State either. Like, it's just you can't do that against a team with that much talent.
I don't think it matters against a team that can score in roughly 2.5 minutes. Like, you're not really, when you have offenses that are that crazy talented. Like, if you're shortening the game, you're kind of putting yourself at risk. Like, you want the defense to remain. You need drives that are long enough to keep your defense fresh. But the goal has to be we have to score points and we have to try to run away from them and hope that the defense does enough to stop their offense a few times.
I think the only flip side to that is I do think there's situations, and I don't know if Ohio State falls into this bucket, but there are situations with teams that thrive on a lot of possessions where you can start to get in their heads if they're not out there a lot. Now, I think that's more like the old Oregon teams that are super tempo, and it's not as much Ohio State.
When you have an Ohio State team that's comfortable running or passing, it doesn't really matter with them because they're like, okay, well, we'll just get in a rhythm here. We don't have to pass the ball every time. We can run it on you.
Agreed.
And just kind of drive it down the field efficiently either way.
Brian, man, thank you for the comment. Chryst is not going to get fired if and very likely when Wisconsin loses to Ohio State. But I get your frustration, man. That is reflective of the frustration of a lot of Badger fans.
We could probably lose every game that's left this season, and unless there's something crazy with the way that happens, like, we find out that he was found in an opium den in like 3 weeks, then I don't think Paul Chryst is going anywhere.
What a story that would be. All right. Coming up, a bunch more questions, including some that are a little more defensive of Paul Chryst. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs, information, and it's also a great spot for Wisconsin sports newsletters, what's happening with the latest coaching trends, esports, golf, NASCAR, basketball, baseball. It's all on BetOnline. The latest odds, live in-game betting, futures. I've talked about it a lot. We were all homers on this show. We all went over on Wisconsin. Listen, that book's not written, but nobody was factoring a Washington State loss. But it's still a great spot. BetOnline. Go online, test your sports knowledge. Do it responsibly. If you have a feel on the pennant races, basketball's about a month out. If you have a feel on either NBA or NCAA, who's going to take either to Final Four trip or into the conference finals, great time to do that. BetOnline, get your mobile device, head to the website today, learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. I want to thank everyone again for tuning into Locked On Badgers. Really do appreciate everybody who took the time to leave these comments. Again, our goal is to always get this into the show because we're very appreciative of everyone that's taking the time to make these comments. It's about the community. It's about building it up. Just as a reminder, we are definitely trying. We're right on Locked On Iowa's subscription heels here. So we're definitely trying to catch them. If you have a second, you enjoy the show, please hit subscribe. It definitely helps. Let's catch the Hawkeyes. They do not deserve to be ahead of us. We have a better fan base and a better community that we're building. Let's bring Justin back on. We can just continue chopping through all your comments, all your questions. Let's go to this one from Greg. This is Greg Linscomb. I couldn't fit the whole name in there. Relax. 1 year Coach Alvarez went 7-5. Fans thought the game had passed him by. Coach Chryst believes in not putting your defense in bad situations. He wins 66, 67% of the time. Last year we started 1-3. And this comment from Greg kept going, basically saying we started 1-3. We turned it around. Basically relax. We're 2 games in. He wins 60, 70% of his games. I don't think this comment is without merit.
It depends on what your expectations are of the program. And what there are some trends that are starting to happen that are concerns. Going 2-4 or 2-2 against Minnesota over the last several years is a problem.
That is a problem.
That's a team that we've been destroying that's now suddenly competitive with us. Iowa, it's starting to slip into being more of a 50-50.
Chryst has been pretty good against Iowa, though.
For the most part, yes. It's helping that they're completely inept on offense. But there's more of these games that we continue to lose against teams that are similar or lower level than us, and fewer games where we're winning against teams that are better than us. And what are the joys that fans take away from sports? It's the big games, winning your big games, upsetting, having a Cinderella game that you win. That's the type of stuff that brings it. Achieving something you haven't done before or haven't done in a long time. It's not continuing to do the same thing over and over and over again and not achieving any new heights whenever you do it. Do I hate being able to win the number of games that we've been winning? No. But I also don't like going to a bowl game against ASU or Wake Forest or whoever when I feel like Wisconsin is a better program than that, and they should be striving for more than that. Like the Duke's Mayo Bowl is not what we start our season saying, hey, that's where we can get guys.
Despite the classic trophy. And
the commercials.
Yeah, it's again one of those spots, and this is kind of reflective of the first question we talked about. I think we do need to appreciate the fact that Wisconsin rarely has a bad season, and Chryst has strengths, right? I've talked about his strengths a lot. Like there's a very high floor with Paul Chryst, which I appreciate. I think he builds a good culture. However, you almost have to separate his first couple of years, and this thing, I think what you're saying, Justin, from his last couple of years. We really have entered in a spot, and I was talking about this with Mike on a previous show. What is the last upset was from Wisconsin football where we upset a team that quite frankly, is better than us. You can't really think of one. Maybe
Hmm.
LSU, like
Probably
going back to
in his first
that
year.
Lambeau game. Yeah,
His
probably that
first
Lambeau game. And I mean, that was his second year, right?
year. Yeah,
Yep.
second year.
Because first year we opened it with
was our first
Alabama.
year.
Yep. But that's a long time ago, and
It
that's
is.
not a good sign. So, Greg, man, thank you.
And 2020 hindsight on that, wasn't that great of a win?
No, but in the moment, it was.
It was, yes.
And
I will agree with that. We were all super excited.
Yeah, and that speaks to what you're saying about the joys of fandom, right? Like that. It's not that we thought we didn't have a chance, but that was are we going to beat them? We don't know. And that was an awesome feeling.
We thought it was a defining win for the program at that point.
Yep. I love it. All right. Greg, thanks so much for the comment. Let's keep going. Right here from Steven Heisel. I go to football games in Madison all the time. Now I want to sell my tickets for the Minnesota game. Chris needs to go. We already kind of hit that one, but I just want to show again, like there's a level of frustration here. Steven, man, appreciate the comment. Don't sell them yet is what I would say. We're going to get the X back this year. I firmly believe that. Dice One Gaming. How do we think about Engram doing a better job? Jet sweeps, deep shots down the field. Did you see some things, Justin? Maybe he wasn't as consistent as you wanted, but have you seen some differences with Engram on board?
I think what was said is that there's more complexity with the routes that we're putting into play and setting things up. And I think that's true. I think we can see that based off of the amount of open wide receivers. And it seems to be giving Mertz some cleaner looks. He's got more guys that there's just not bodies around anymore, which is something that Wisconsin really struggled with, because it always seemed like whenever we'd run a play, there were like three guys like on a route, right? You had like the wide receivers fighting for their life to get to the ball. And now it seems like we have guys running free. And I can't remember the last time we watched zone coverage where we saw guys just running wide open, like Cundiff was in that last game. It's like, okay, yeah, we haven't seen this. It seems like teams settle on our routes. So I think there's been some more complexity added to how we run our routes and set things up that has really helped, which has probably helped Mertz too. I think that's honestly, we'd all, for the most part, agree. The previous passing scheme was fairly simplistic, and it was also very archaic. And there were a lot of teams that had mentioned that it's like they don't run a ton of different stuff. They don't run a lot of different things off of it. And it's pretty easy to get a feel for what you think they're going to do.
Mm-hmm. Multiple teams last year, Penn State and Notre Dame, both had defenders say we kind of knew what was coming. And I would also say, even though Chryst, and right or wrong, we talked about this, maybe didn't love a few of the deep shots Mertz took. There were games last year where we were begging, take one deep shot. Yeah. We took 4 or 5 in that game.
Well, he's taken a lot more shots that are in that 10 to 20 range too, which I actually said that's the bigger deal when you're trying to clear out the box, because linebackers have to start dropping back a little bit. You have to account for it. You can't just play downhill if they're going to just dump it over your linebackers if they're coming down. And that's what we're seeing.
Dice One Gaming. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, we got a bunch of comments to get to. I think we agree on this one. Yeah. We just want it to be more consistent, like more consistently taking some of those shots. But Dice One Gaming, appreciate the comment, man. I think we both agree with you on here. Let's come to this one. Reginald Torian on Wisconsin, thought Wazoo came in, good scheme. I hope they run the table, make our loss look fine in the long run. I think there's a typo in there somewhere. But I do think it's important to Washington State. We had a couple Washington State people come into our chat as well and basically say, listen, we're not Temple. Like, you guys are like melting down over losing to us. That was a team. We should beat Washington State. Let's be very clear. That was a team that was above 500 in the Pac-12 last year. And I thought they played really well.
It's like a game against Maryland, is how I look at it.
Maybe a little better.
Maryland was actually pretty good last year.
Sure. And they have a passing attack.
The point that I'm making is that they don't stack up from a talent standpoint to the level that we do, where we should be able to out-talent that team to win that game.
We should. But I think the bigger point here is maybe we're over melting down a little bit is maybe the point Reginald's making. Because this is we did just see a weekend, and just let me point this out, where, not that I need to, I think people know, but Notre Dame lost to, what was it, Marshall? Nebraska lost at home to an FCS team. Washington State is not a terrible loss in the grand scheme of things.
Cumulative thing over the last several years that people are getting frustrated with it's not necessarily even just Washington State. It's the way you're losing the game. Like it's the dumb penalties, it's turnovers that are like
Mhm.
it's seriously, you're sitting at and watching the game and it's like, I couldn't write this up as what I expect to happen in a game for how we're going to blow this. Like we get an interception that looks like a turning point in the game and we fumble it back to the other team. Like,
Yeah.
really, this is the type of stuff that's going to happen to us. That's going to cost us. Or we break a 16-yard run, and of course there's a penalty on it that's going to take us not only back to where we were, but tack on another 10 to 15 yards. And it's like,
it's just a cavalcade of mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Reginald, man, thank you for the comment. Let's go to the next one. Kickers left 6 points on the field, absolute ducks. There's the difference. And you said nothing about this topic, Mark Stoll. So I want to start with this. Like, I appreciate all the comments, right? I've said this all the time. If you guys disagree with one of my takes, think I'm wrong, think I'm missing something, please. I always want to keep it respectful no matter what, but I'm here for all the discourse. So the one thing, I want to kick this to you, Justin, but the one thing I would say on this topic is I think it's unfair to say a 43-yard field goal and a 51-yard field goal are 6 points left on the field. College kickers aren't automatic, and a 51-yard field goal is a total coin flip.
Well, the 51s definitely is, but they're beyond this. After checking out Mr. Heilprin and one of his buddies discussing Mr. Cavaruso, he's apparently having some issues with his mechanics right now and his kicking.
Mm-hmm.
And the kicker admitted to this. So I don't understand what you're doing. If you have a guy that you know isn't comfortable in what he's doing, why are you putting him out there to do it? Because if that's the case, then that's a big. I have to question your coaching at that point. If you have a guy that you know isn't comfortable putting him into pressure situations, that's like, it seems like you're setting that guy up for failure.
Well, he had one kick in his career, which obviously came in the first game. All right, so you're running a guy out there without a lot of experience to try to bang a 51-yarder. To me, putting this on Vito when the offense scored 14 points, and it just feels like we're looking for a person to blame when I'm not going to ever blame a college kicker for missing a 51-yard kick.
But he was
Not
injured
ever.
for the bulk of camp, and you have somebody that was there every day that all signs point to, based on what everyone said, is actually had a pretty good camp. Why not give him the chance to do it and just say, hey, let's get you repped. Let's get you practicing for a few weeks, and then we'll get you out there.
Right.
I'd much rather do that and have the guy who's been practicing all spring and all fall, every day, than the guy who's struggling to kind of get some things together to be competent and be ready to go. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think that's a fair criticism. I think part of this might have been, and Mark, by the way, thank you so much for the comment. Please keep them coming, man. Let me know where I'm wrong or let me know where I'm missing things. I think part of the thing might have just been Vito has such a cannon. We've heard about it. Like his leg is extraordinarily, by all reports, incredibly strong for a kicker. I think they probably just had the tool in the tool shed, right? And they hadn't had a chance to use it. And they were kind of like, let's see, let's check this out. Let's take the blanket off the shiny toy. Let's go to the next one. This is from Coolmon6. Lockdown Badgers, my new go-to for bad. I had to put that in there. I had to include this comment. Thank you, man, so much. Keep up the good work, fellas. But then he also wanted to come on to the next one, talking about Graham Mertz. We haven't really talked Mertz yet much. Unlike previous years, very little negative here for Graham Mertz. You and I talked about this. I did an underrated, overrated show. I thought Graham Mertz, how good he's been, has been a little underrated. And there was people out there who give him like a C+, a C- grade. I thought he was really good.
I would give him a B+ right now on this season. I think he's hit the plays you've given him. He's been a net pot. Listen, I always talk, when you and I talk football, I always talk about, you want a quarterback that's going to be a net positive for you. Somebody that adds to your game plan and makes your team stronger. To me, a game manager is a neutral. He's a guy that's there. He hits the check down passes and the little things. He's not a guy that really adds much to your team winning or losing. He's just kind of there. And then a negative would be pretty much what we had last year. He was really rough last year. Definitely, it was a negative impact on our offense. It was a problem. Mertz has been a positive this year. In fact, 100%. we might have been not have scored this last game if it wasn't for him. Here's what I'm going to say. If this is what we get the rest of the season, he impresses me more than Cohen did in 2019, or Cohen, because here's the deal. Most of his shots are 10 to 20 yards so far. And he's taken some deep shots, and Cone checked down a lot. And he's very efficient, but it was a lot of 10 yards or less, short passes to Ferguson and stuff like that. And it's like this, so far we're seeing guys open. He might have better receivers, which might be an aspect of it, but he's hitting guys in the intermediate routes that we haven't seen in a while, since probably Wilson.
I think I 100% agree with you. I 100% agree with your Cone take too. I think he has a chance to be better than that version of Cone that we liked quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's been really good, and I don't get Coolmon 6. Hey, thank you so much for the compliment. B, I agree. We agree with your comment. Coming up next on Locked On Badgers, we have a bunch more comments. We're going to get to as many of them as we can. Keep Justin on the show. Again, really, really do appreciate it. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. Want to thank everybody for tuning into Locked On Badgers, making this your first listen every day. Really do appreciate it. We're going to keep trucking through the comments, get through as many of them as we can. Again, I got a bunch of them. I really do apologize we can't get to everybody's, but we're going to get to as much as possible. Let's pop this up here from W. Boudet. Mertz played great. Receivers, tight ends played well. The thing I wanted to talk about on this one, Garendo looks like the best running back. O-line and defensive line back end was terrible. Overall, the team lacked energy, will to win. A lot to unpack here. I want to start with Garendo because I feel like we need to get him more touches. And I agree with Boudet's take on this.
I think, as much as I love Skylar Bell running the jet sweep, I actually think he's been pretty good at it so far. I think that should be Garendo.
Mm-hmm.
You have him. He's a competent enough receiver that you could send him deep if you wanted to. If you actually wanted to send him out in a pass route to sell that, him being in that position. And I think what we're fighting with that is that, well, do we really want to run a pass route with him out there? An actual pass play where we don't make him just a decoy. My opinion on that is the guy runs a 4.3. So even if he just runs a fly route, maybe somebody screws up and he just gets open deep. Like, he'll get a step on somebody, they're not catching him. But on the opposite side of that is if he gets around the corner on the jet sweep, Skylar Bell weighs $190.
Mm-hmm.
He's like 5'10", 5'11". Garendo's 6 foot, 220.
Yeah.
Coming downhill with speed to burn. If he gets that corner, it would be Melvin Gordon type getting around the corner. Like, you're not catching him if you take bad angles.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
I 100% agree. Do you know how many 6'1", 220-pound guys that run a 4.35 we have on the team?
Yeah.
We got one. Please, and he's finally healthy, right? Yeah. He's too athletic to not get more involved. And being that token kick returner is not enough for me. So totally agree with that. That was the big thing out of that I wanted to get to. Did you feel like the team lacked energy or will to win? I always feel like the will to win thing is a little hard to judge.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can necessarily say that. I do think that they were getting demoralized with the penalties and stuff like that. Like, every time something seemed to start clicking, then it would take a step back. And I think the one thing that this is a pretty young team in a lot of spots. We have a lot of new starters at the offensive line. I don't know how much leadership we have in that huddle outside of Mertz. And I wonder if we're kind of seeing where guys don't have that, you got to keep the pedal down, we can do this attitude quite yet, because they don't have that confidence yet. Like, a lot of these guys haven't been out there and gotten the reps enough to be like, yeah, we can do this. We've done this before. Let's keep it going. That's a great point.
That's a great point, because a lot of these guys aren't new to the program, but they're new to the roles they're in.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's a great point. WB Day, again, if I mispronounce names, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for the comment. Let's keep going. David Polenes, and we're going to get a couple more in here before we have to cut it. Offense line has regressed 3 years in a row with higher rated recruits. If he can't develop our bread and butter, Chryst isn't the guy, plain and simple. I mean, I would start by saying he's not the guy developing it anyway. Yeah. I mean, everything ultimately is on the head coach, right? Like, he's the captain of the ship, but he's not the offensive line coach. And I think we all like what he did there in terms of putting Bosted in charge. But David's right. Like, the offensive line hasn't gotten better. It
hasn't been a strength. Here's the thing. Do we know that this is the issue? Like, this is, Bosted has said that it had said a few weeks ago already, he wasn't happy with where the line was. Mm-hmm. And this could speak to the level of development that there was coming into this season, to this point. It's possible that we're learning on the fly that Bosted felt like these guys really need to be pushed. They need to get better. I think it will get better. I
agree.
think by the end of the season that they will be a strong run unit. The question will be, how much does it affect us in the meantime before that happens?
Yeah, I agree with that. Keep in mind,
they're good. By the way, they've been good in pass protection.
Agreed. And Washington State is a good pass rushing team, and Mertz had clean pockets.
Yeah, they had 7 sacks the week before.
Yep, and 2 real dudes on the edges. I would say the other thing to keep in mind with this, I think Bosted's going to get him whipped into shape. There's 4 guys in new spots, right? Fertney, Beach moving inside. Nelson is a new left tackle. Obviously, the right tackle spot's been up in flux. So I think it's going to get better. I agree with you there, Justin. David, man, thank you for the comment. We're going to get a couple more in here really quick. Let me see. Another one about Garendo. Alien Space, I hear you. Get him more touches. Mertz has looked great. Andy Nevins, I hear you. Fire Chryst if he loses the Minnesota game. Riemann on. Maybe, right? If he loses a third
that one I start
game,
to get a little...
Yeah. Listen, we'll put that up here just so we can see it. Again, if I mispronounce names. If he loses another Minnesota game, that fire's got to get hit up. I love this comment from Dan Chilton. If we were losing going to the fourth quarter, no jump around. Yeah, maybe. You can't take that from the students. They'll never show up.
You have such a fickle... team if that were the case. Be like, no, we're not doing well. We're not going to have fun.
I do love it. Let's get 2 or 3 more really quick in this. Big Apple Bucky, I'm praying Nebraska doesn't hire Jim Leonard away. We will need him in the head coach in the next year or 2. So not paying a ton of I don't think Chryst is gone in a year or 2, but every Badger fan thinks Jim Leonard is the next guy, Justin. Like,
oh yeah.
If Paul Chryst is the coach for 8 to 12 more years,
that won't happen.
Right? Like, he's going to go somewhere if he wants to. His kids will be out of school. Like, some school is going to come with a lot of money.
Here's the deal. I think you've got Leonard for another 3 or 4 years before he says, I'm not waiting anymore. We're doing this one way or the other. I honestly think we'll learn Paul Chryst's fate within that time frame. Like, if they continue to go downhill, then he'll be out. Or if they can start winning again, then it's going to become clear that they need to move him up. Here's the problem that I have with that. There are other people that, like, who would it be if Leonard was to leave, who would be the number 1 replacement?
Bobby April.
Yep.
Like right now. And that works. I think.
Where do you think he'd likely go if Leonard was hired at Nebraska?
If Leonard was hired, well, so let me start with this 2-parter. Nebraska doesn't have a shot to hire Jim Leonard. I'm going to start there. I
agree. And the hilarious thing is their fan base is like, why would we want him? It's like, because your defense stinks and he would instantly turn you into a top 5 unit.
Because he's an incredibly sharp winner, you idiots.
Yeah.
But that's not a job he would take. Like, he would not take the Nebraska job. I'm pretty confident of that.
No. I definitely don't think he would either.
And I think if that happened, he might take Bobby April with him, quite frankly. But we don't know. That's I think
he'd be his defensive coordinator. I agree with that.
Or is that a better spot, though, than defensive coordinator in Madison? I don't know. I don't know, right? Like,
I don't know. I mean, if you have a guy that you heavily respect who gave you that opportunity, which it sounds like that's what happened there. And
it's possible. I mean, I think that's a whole lot of conjecture. The bigger point here is I think we both agree Jim Leonard's not going to be here probably for 8 to 12 years as the defensive coordinator.
Won't. I really think that we'll know one way or another. Listen, if we start dropping down to 7 and 5 seasons or something like that, then there's going to be people that are kind of like, hey, this needs to change. Because we've already had some seasons where we're showing regression already. I mean, we had 9 wins last year, but there really wasn't anything on the table where you're like, hey, that's a great win.
The Iowa win was pretty good.
It was all right.
Again,
that was a terrible offense last year too.
Right, but again, we're getting back to
we had a dominant defense. You basically just had to be like, hey, listen, let's give them 20 minutes. They'll screw up and give us points.
We're getting back to that discussion though. Like 9 wins is still really good. Like it's a very weird spot to be in, is all I'm saying.
I don't like taking bowl games into account.
Okay.
When we start looking at how seasons play out, because it's so hard to tell. Like it's like the 13-1 season we had Miami. Like that to me was kind of like, yeah, that's Miami though. Like, whatever.
It's still an Orange Bowl though.
Like, it is an Orange Bowl, but it's not like this is the 1994 or something like that, where the Orange Bowl was the Orange Bowl.
It's fair. No, bowls are different now. That is a fair point. Let's get 2 more in. Let's see. 3 more, because I see guys here that I definitely love, like Uncultured Barbarian, who remains the number 1 screen name of all of our commenters. typical Paul Chryst game. People try to defend him. I want to focus on the first part because we had Scott on the show and he talked about it's a problem when we're starting to talk about, oh, this is a typical Paul Chryst game, right? And when that starts to become like a moniker, years ago, Clemson was like a moniker. They would drop a game every year.
They're Clemsoning.
Yeah, Clemsoning.
We're Christing.
We're Chryst. It sounds like a really good thing, actually. Like Christening.
Here's the thing. When it comes to something like this, if we're as fans aware of this happening, is the staff aware of it? Or do they just do it? Well, it's just a loss. It just worked out that way. Because if we're aware of this, like we're noticing that there's a common trend here, something needs to be changed. Because this is something that should have, stood out to them before we ever notice it. And it's pretty clear that that's not happening. Like there's been some brutal, like every time we're on the precipice of like we can get things going, like that Oregon Rose Bowl.
Yeah,
that should have been our game. We were the better team in that game, and we shot ourselves in the foot a bunch. A lot of stupid errors that shouldn't have happened that cost us a Rose Bowl. And actually, that's what boosts you going into the next season for everyone to look at your team, which boosts recruiting and everything else.
And that is a bowl that still matters. Like that one still matters.
Yeah.
Let's come to this one really quick. And again, so many comments we're not going to be able to get to. Logan Thorpe, thank you for the comment. Justin, I'll ask you, are you missing Bielema a lot? Logan Thorpe says,
I miss his aggression.
Let me read this question because I just also realized that there's people on the pod that can't see the question. So for the people listening, Logan Thorpe says, honestly, this team is way too vanilla. I am missing Bielema a lot. So Justin, sorry to interrupt you. Do you miss Bielema a lot?
I don't miss Bielema a lot. His defense was borderline terrible. It was, quite frankly, it was Nebraska level defense most of the time, other than 2006 when it was really good. JJ Watt carried him in 2010, but you saw in 2011 we had a chance to be a national title type team, and they were like mid 40s, I think, or something like that on defense.
It was Borland and nobody else.
Yep.
I shouldn't say that, but it was not a good defense.
We are missing his aggression and his I don't care attitude on offense. I don't think we're vanilla right now. I do think there needs to be a shakeup in terms of the plays we're choosing. Like it's not that it's vanilla, it's that we need to switch it up a little bit more in terms of it can't be run every first down. I get it that you don't want to get stuck in second and long if that's not the case, but at some point you have to trust your quarterback.
Yeah, you got to mix it up.
If you're going to accomplish your seasonal goals, you have to coach like you're playing to win those games. And you're not going to do that running every first down.
We certainly did not see that in Washington State. There's no doubt about it. And I don't think that's arguable. They have to mix it up more.
And quite frankly, we scored a lot more points, it seemed like, with Bielema. I may be wrong on that, but I don't care if it was in preseason games. It was also when you're putting 80 points on Indiana or whoever, like we weren't afraid to keep the pedal down against anybody.
We stepped on throats.
Yeah. I want to see us stop caring about the clock and just attack. Like what I would have loved to see on Saturday's game was cool. They're going to let us pass. We are going to absolutely torch you until this game is over.
And just keep doing it again and again and again and again. Like that's
you throw for 340 yards and 3 touchdown passes for Mertz, then so be it.
Like there's no rule that says you can't pass 3-4 times in a row. Like, so I agree with you, man. Logan, thank you for the comment. Coming out on this one, Tom Neese, who has made a bunch of comments, big support of the show. He had several points, but there's 2 here I wanted to highlight. I never call for someone's job. However, I do think the boss needs to sit down and point out. And he had multiple points, but the first one stuck out to me. Special teams has been bad for a couple of years now, and this is starting to become a trend. Chris Herring was the special teams coach. Now he's the tight ends coach. But this team is not good enough to overcome multitudes of special teams mistakes.
Especially if we want to play this way. If you want to play time and possession football, you better put points on the board when you get your opportunities. We're not doing that.
And you got to be cleaner in the return games too. Like you can't give up 60-yard kickoff returns. You can't.
Or a punt negative for -9 yards.
And this is a trend. Like we remember dropped punts. Oh my goodness, in the Ohio State, Big Ten title game. We remember we didn't have a field goal game last year. Really, since Rafael Gagliano's been here, we haven't had a kicker that we could trust. It's just has been a bad unit, and Chryst has to get this figured out.
I agree completely.
Tom, man, thank you for the comment. We agree. For Justin's sake, one more. Do you think we can hire Lance Leipold? Only because Justin is the biggest Lance fan out there. We're not going to hire Lance Leipold.
Listen, what won me over was watching him play against Texas. I think they had a 4th and 1 at like their own 35 in that game. And he bet on his team.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me was like, you're either going to win or lose these kids forever. And I don't think they converted it. They got it back on a turnover like shortly after that. But he coaches to win. Like, he will take his shots. And if he loses the game, he loses the game. If it's a bad choice, he'll live with it. But he will not lose because he wasn't willing to take a chance. And that's what I love about him as a coach. And it's paying off at Kansas because those kids are believing in him. And it's hard not to believe in a guy who goes 109-6 at Division III.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on them to anyone who actually cares about that coach. He's 2-0 already at Kansas this season, just beat West Virginia and put up 55 on them. And I think there's an outside shot they get to a bowl game this year.
That'd be awesome.
Which would be insane.
Well, his track record says he's a great coach.
They've talked about him. There's people, Nebraska fans don't want anything to do with him. He would be a A++ hire for Nebraska. If you want culture, that guy will beat out all the bad in that program.
It's funny, like the really good candidates, Nebraska fans are like, like Jim Leonard.
He's not flashy enough. He's not going to win the interview.
Lance Leipold.
Guess what he'll do? He'll win the game. He would scare me to death if Nebraska got Lance Leipold. They would kick our butt.
RR, man, thank you so much for the comment. And we're going to cut it there again. I have like 20 more in the queue, guys, and then another 30, 40 that I didn't even get in the queue. So I really do appreciate it. I can't tell you how much I appreciate all the comments, all the likes, all the subscribes. It's you guys that are making this show good, and people like Justin that are able to jump in that make us all smarter. So that's all a reflection of everyone in the community as we build this. We're going to keep talking to you guys this week. We got a game coming up, more recruiting talk. Basketball recruiting got pushed a day or two, but we're going to get to that as well. Thank you, everyone, for listening. After this, go tune in to Locked On Big Ten. Nate Dickinson take you around the conference, all the latest news around our foes that we kind of like, the ones we don't like, and the ones we despise. That's on Locked On Big Ten. This is Locked On Badgers. Thank you so much on Wisconsin.